But we're going to go to Joe. He, him is a theist, wants to try and help us understand a little bit about Jesus Christ. Well, hey, Joe, you're talking with Secularity and the Cross Examiner. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you guys?
Oh, pretty good. Pretty good. Before we totally go down this route, I just want to kind of give some context here, man.
Gotcha.
We would prefer you not kind of like preach at us, but more kind of have a discussion with us. Like, hey, here's something I think, and here's kind of where I think that's supported. And then we can go, oh, okay, you know, that's interesting. Here's maybe why we don't accept that. But yeah, I mean, give us your thoughts. Like, what do you want to tell us today, Joe?
Well, I'll say that that's kind of cool because that's kind of like the way I talk to people. So it's just
Great.
Not like we have a prison ministry, and in prison we do a circle so that everybody's allowed to ask questions about anything, and that's where we start. Yeah, so
I love that.
That's kind of yeah. So it's not about who's right or wrong. You have to share ideas. If you don't share them the best way possible, how are you ever gonna know? If you're force feeding somebody down a tube, it's gonna come back up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anyways, would you like me to start, or would you guys want to?
By all means, why don't you start?
Okay. So I usually just start by the simple thing. I ask people what a noun is. You guys remember back in school what a noun was?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not really sure where we're going, but yeah, I do. Person, place, thing.
Yeah, that's what Schoolhouse Rock taught me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill. Love that.
Yeah, and the reason why it's considered a noun is because it's something that can be seen, touched, and it can be observed. It's something tangible, something of reality.
I don't think that's exactly true. Cross Examiner, do you want to do a little explaining there? Or?
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, maybe I don't want to preempt any further discussion that you're going to have, but the name noun is a label we put on a part of grammar. That's not the reason that it is a noun. Is not it can be seen or touched or observed. A name is a noun, but I can't touch my name. Cross Examiner is a noun, but I can't touch it or see it. I can think about it. So I just want to jump in on that early, because I find if we go into conversations a long way down the road and then we come back and we have to say, well, the premise of that the noun is this thing is wrong. I didn't want you to go too far before we settled that question. So I don't know if your argument depends upon that definition, but I thought I'd point that out.
It does, because we often forget that an idea isn't part of a noun too. So that's where we come into place, because I'm a person, place, or thing, or idea. So even though a name is a function of an idea, that's the reason why it's such a tangible thing. Such a tangible thing. For instance, if I tell a kid Santa Claus is real, go ahead.
I think ideas could be. I mean, I'm not opposed to that fourth category, but I think ideas could just be under the broad category of like things. Right? Like, I think ideas are a subset of like existence, right? Like thoughts and those things. It's not that they're immaterial. It's just that they're a more specified type of material, because they're emergent from this squishy substance that's a brain.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at the definition of a noun, it's person, place, or thing, or idea, though it's not tangible. It's not. Yeah, so it's observable. So that's where it falls into that category. So going back to that, so what people don't understand
I want to jump in again. Sorry. I just want to jump in again. You slipped a phrase in there at the end. It said, no matter what, I think that's what you were saying, is all of those things, person, place, thing, idea, no matter what, it's observable. Did I hear you right on that?
Yes.
Okay, so is an idea observable?
Yeah, it is.
By everybody?
It's observable. Now, that's where I was. No, it's a presumptuous thing. I'll explain like this. If you give me a second, I'll say it like this. If I tell a kid Santa Claus is real, then the idea is observable, but through his actions. So he'll bring out cookies, he'll bring out milk. The definition, you might not say like Muslims might say, hey, God doesn't say, Jesus doesn't say he's God, but the definition of him saying it is there. So by the same token, we can see the kid by his actions. We can observe that idea by the actions that he takes. That's why it's considered a noun.
Is it possible there's an individual who does not share the same idea. Let's take, for instance, the Santa Claus being real, coming to give presents. Is it possible that two individuals, one who has that idea and one who doesn't have that idea, perform the exact same actions indistinguishable from each other? Is that possible in your eyes?
That is possible, but every single action comes, that is correct. But every single action comes from an idea. So in other words, where I'm going to, every single person is product of an environmental, idealistic point of view. What I mean point of view is a personal point of view. So every single person is not who they say they are. We're just a product of our environment. That's what we say. You know, in the Christian side, we say, if you're hanging around with somebody, we know who you are, or something like that. In Spanish, it's a different...
Birds of a feather flock together, that type of stuff. I'm not sure. Joe, hang on just a second, Joe, because I think there's parts of what you're saying that are kind of, to me, what I would say just like mundane. Like, for instance, the idea that we're shaped by our environment, right? The idea that like our personal history and the history of like the geography around us and so forth, like plays into who we are as people, and like we're all multifaceted and yada yada yada. And like I'm cool with all of that. You know, maybe there's some nuance there we could pick apart, but I'm not sure that it's super relevant. And that's kind of why I'm jumping in at this moment. Is I want to get to the thrust here, man. I want to get to the tip of this spear. How does this connect to like Jesus and like me accepting Jesus Christ into my heart, or like God being real, or miracles happening? What's that connection for us, my friend?
So the connection is, there's a passage in the Bible that says this: if you find yourself, you lose yourself. The reason why I understand it says that, and I'll say it like this, that's a personal opinion. The reason why he says like that, if you find yourself, you lose yourself, it's because he understands, and I'm just throwing it out there, that we can only be a perception of our environment. Like, for instance, I don't know if you remember that story where a girl got raised with chickens. She was acting like a chicken. They were trying to get her out of that.
Again, Joe. Hang on. I don't know that we need another story. I at least am following along with you pretty well. I think a lot of our community is too. I could be wrong, but what does that thing that you just brought up, that verse, if you find yourself, you lose yourself, what is the connection between that and like God existing, or like Jesus being the Son of God or rising from the dead or anything? Like that's the connection I'm not sure about. Like, are there some nice things that are said in the Bible? Like, sure, are there any things that are nice and beneficial and true that are exclusive to the Bible? That's where I'd say like no. So like, again, this thing of like, if you find yourself, you lose yourself, is something to me that seemingly is very mundane. I've heard a lot of people talk about this in a lot of different ways for a long time. So like, what's the real big connection here? Just like, if there's another bullet pointer to like skip a little to get us to the kind of where the end of your thought is here. Cause I'm having trouble figuring out,
I got you.
I'm following you, but I'm having trouble figuring out kind of what the value and purpose is. And I'm not trying to be a jerk with that, by the way.
I get you. No. I clearly understand. I know it sounds like I'm preaching. So the reason why I explain like this way is because every story has a backstory. But I'll jump to the point. So we presumptively assume that we're just who we are is who we are. And the reason why I say this is that that's not true. The true basis on our existence is we are a product of our environment. Now, going back to who Jesus Christ, that's what he teaches. The reason why it's so important to understand that the value of him is because, going back to the Muslims teach that Jesus Christ did not die on the cross. And I'm saying this because it goes back to the existence of Jesus Christ. So at the beginning of the story of the Torah, it actually, this is something that nobody really talks about. Genesis, if Adam and Eve sinned, then there's a premise to that story. And that premise of the story is Genesis 3:15. Genesis 3:15 actually says a prophecy of a woman having a child. That woman's going to step on the serpent's head, and that serpent's going to bite his heel. Basically, every single prophecy, every single person in the Old Testament, every single idea, every single story, every single is presumed on Genesis 3:15. The probability of him coming through that storyline is very, very
hang on a sec, Joe.
Impossible.
I'll let
Impossible.
you get back. I'll let you get back. But like, if I remember correctly, the thing that you brought up in Genesis was the moment when God is chastising Adam and Eve, and he then proceeds to curse all three of them, Adam, Eve, and the snake, in various ways.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yes.
I don't see anything prophetic there. I see God explicitly meting out punishment, right? Like God says, like, from now on, women will hate snakes and they'll like step on their heads because they don't like them. That's not really like a prophecy so much as it is just like me waking up today and going, yes, clouds will be in the sky tomorrow because of precipitation, you know?
Do you have the Bible in front of you? If you look up Genesis 3:15?
I do. I do. I have mine right here. I can pull it up. I guess I probably could just pull it up on Google as well, but let me see if I can get to it quickly. It's been a while since I've done like those Bible challenges, you know, but okay. Genesis 3 and verse 15, I will put enmity between you and the woman. Wait, let's go back a little. The Lord God said to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed are you among all animals and among all wild creatures. Upon your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will strike your head, and you will strike his heel. And then just because I think it's really interesting, to the woman, God said, I will greatly increase your pangs in childbirth. In pain you shall bring forth children. Cool. And then it mentions that the husband will rule over her. So again, not really much of like a prophecy to me, so much as God just saying, here's the punishment for the bad things that you did. So what's the prophetic aspect of that?
Oh, Genesis 3:15. If you look at all its history, and this is where it's gonna take you for a pretty good ride. So all its history is based on Genesis 3:15. All the Old Testament is based on Genesis 3:15. That's what I try to help people with, because there's like we go different places.
Hang on, Joe. Hang on, Joe. I think we're with you. There's a little bit of background noise, by the way, if you could help us out a little with that. But I feel like I understand what you're saying.
I'm glad you do, because I don't.
Okay, so it sounds to me, and I have a rebuttal after this, but I want to just ask a quick clarifying question, Joe. It sounds like kind of what you're saying is that particular verse is really like the foundation of like the rest of the narrative that ultimately prophesies Jesus is coming. Is that where you're getting at, Joe?
Sure. About that. That's like your evidence for everything in the rest of the Bible. It's impossible to talk about the rest of the Bible with that as a premise.
That much we can follow.
So let me just real quick read you something here that I think might be a little confusing, having that as the premise. What we've got is Genesis. I believe we're in chapter 32, verse 22. The same night, this is where Jacob wrestles with God. So the same night he got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 maids, and his 11 children across the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, blah, blah, blah. Jacob was left alone, blah, blah, blah. He saw a man, and Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When he saw that, he did not prevail against Jacob. He struck him on the hip socket, maybe his dick, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint when he wrestled them. Where's the connection between that and the enmity between women and snakes and offspring? And what's the connection there? Just help me out with that.
With that one? Okay. So basically not every single story, like for instance, and I'll ask you this, since you asked me that question, but it's kind of fair to ask you this question on top of that one. But I'll tell you right now, the thing about it is that when Abraham was going to sacrifice his firstborn, do you remember that?
Yeah, I mean, it was his secondborn technically, but yeah, go ahead. Because he had Ishmael first.
But when he says it was a
just
promise.
The firstborn with his wife instead of his sex slave, but yeah.
Illegitimate son, I guess you could say. Not really.
That's fair. I'll take that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, so when he's about to sacrifice his son, the reason why he puts him to the test is because it correlates to that first story, because God was going to give his firstborn, being Jesus, born. I mean born, not created. Firstborn being Jesus, so that story correlates with who Jesus is.
So I can see the parallels of that, but it's like, but this is the problem that I have, is it sounds to me like what you're saying is that the things that happened later chronologically are actually the things that the first things are modeled after. And that just seems like completely backwards to me when it comes to understand. If we see an event happen, in front of, and then 20 years goes by, and then another event occurs, and we go, my gosh, there's similarities between these two events. It's nonsensical to say that the second event was actually the model for the first event, right? And so, like, I see where somebody says, hey, there's similar tropes playing out between Abraham and Isaac and God the Father and Jesus the Son. Like, I get that, but for me, all that's not anything fascinating so much as it is just like, yeah, like, this is how we write stories. You know, people are smart enough to make sure that books are at least internally consistent, you know?
I'm glad you pointed that out, because I had the same question. It sounds like here we're just pointing out that this this initial story, this origin story of how we got to be the way we are, which is, you know, what this part of Genesis is talking about, jives with some Jesus fan fiction that was written later on. Like, somebody else was like, hey, what if we take that and make it part of this? That's unsurprising to me. But I guess my question would be, so what? Like, what does this have to do with whether or not any of this is true?
Very good point.
So it basically, what you just said actually correlated with the frame of structure for evolution, because evolution does the same thing on its premise. Like, hey, let's fit this story with that story and see how it correlates. But
yeah, I would push back on that. I would say that, I would say evolution has given us, you know, kind of the framework for how we've understood evolution and continue to make progress on this, has given us these things where we go like, oh snap, if this is true based on all of this stuff we have, then like this should be the case, or we should see this happening. And like, we do just all the time. Like, it's pretty much always worked out. And the times that it hasn't worked out has just been when people are just doing just bad evolution, I guess, to put it in the most bluntest of terms.
Yeah, I understand. Okay. I understand what you mean, because there's a lot of bad evolution, there's a lot of bad Christianity, and in the assumptions that we have. Not in the facts. So we can put facts, we can build facts within facts, like within a storyline. For instance, I'm going back to that storyline. The reason why that storyline to me is very important, and for people, like, this is what I push myself onto, to help people understand that storyline. Because there's two storylines. There's one that's factual and there's one that's a lie. I know that you guys believe that the one of evolution is to be factual, and I believe the one to be Christianity to be truth. Now,
let me ask you this real quickly before we move forward. Hold on a second. If I understood you, you just said there's two stories. One can be true, but not both can be true. So Christianity is true or evolution is true. Is that what I heard you saying, right? And you believe in Christianity?
Yes.
Did I hear that correctly? Okay. So that in and of itself is not true. You could believe, and there are many Christians, right? There are many Christians who accept evolution. Nothing in evolution prevents the belief that Jesus Christ is holy or is God. They can work together, right? Francis Collins was the head of the Human Genome Project, ran the NIH, was the head member of the team that first sequenced the human genome, and is an evangelical Christian. But he himself has said, he didn't say screw it, but ignoring all other evidence, all of the fossils, all of the geological evidence, ignore all of that. The evidence in the human genome, in the DNA of all the animals that we've examined, is more than enough to establish that evolution is true, unequivocally. Yet he's a devout evangelical Christian. So I don't agree with your premise that it's an either or. I'm not saying that Christianity is true. I'm just
I'll-
saying one does not exclude the other.
Yeah.
I'll say it like this. I understand your perception, the way you said it, but that's a basis. That's a statement based on an opinion. And the reason why I say it like this is because, and not to put it down what you said was pretty understandable. But the reason why is because my kids are behind me, so they're like chasing me around. The reason why is because to understand what Christianity is, then you have to lay down its basis. The Bible teaches, and I'll say it like this, that sin started, that death entered through sin of Adam and Eve. Now, if we were to assume true Christianity,
let's cut it short.
Let's stop. Let's stop right there. Go ahead, cross-examiner. What do you have to say
I'm going to
about
jump to the chase here. You know, if your position is evolution can't be true and comport with everything that's said in the Bible, I agree with you. If we are saying that man was created by magic out of nothing and didn't come from a process of evolution, I agree. To that extent, they're incompatible. What you appear to be doing, and I think we're getting to the point here, is saying, I've got mountains of evidence. I've got this scientific method that has produced medicine, that all of the biology is based on the presumption that evolution is true. It predicts things. We could disprove evolution. All you have to do to disprove evolution is prove that there was a Precambrian chicken, right? It passes all our muster. I've got that on one hand, and I've got a book says a thing on the other. And I've been told that the book says a thing is so important that it is part of my identity. And I've been terrified. I don't know when you started believing this, but many people are terrified since they were children that if they don't believe this book is true, that they're going to burn forever or be separated from God. So you have mountains on one side and a book says a thing on the other. And what I hear you saying is, well, book is right, everything else is wrong. That appears to be where you're going.
What I'm saying is that the way you're making your statement is not based on what the Bible teaches. I'm not saying that you like same way you stated.
I don't care what the Bible teaches. What I care about is what's true.
We haven't established that what the Bible teaches is something that we should have such, reverence and authority for, right? Like what we have, just like Cross-Examiner was just saying, like what we have is on one side a lot of material and information that corresponds with the world around us. And then we have things in the Bible that just flat out do not. And again, I agree with you and Cross-Examiner, it seems like, where we're all on the page of, hey, there is stuff in the Bible that if a lot of the stuff we know about, the scientific world around us is true, like they don't exactly work. And like, yeah, but I think that's a problem for the Bible because the Bible hasn't established its ability to actually distinguish between truth and falsehood. And so at the very best, what we have is this kind of, well, we're not sure space, which I guess is better than like 100% knowing all of it is flat wrong. But like we've just got better stuff out there that actually points us in the direction of like, hey, this is true. So why not just go with that and throw out this book says a thing?
I'll say it like this. I know Cross-Examiner is kind of like the reason why I get cut off before saying the statement. And I understand. I'm not trying to put that down. But I'm trying to say before I say the statement, it's kind of like you don't want those listeners to be confused by the statement that I want to make. But what I'm just saying is that.
Well, hold on. I want you to speak, and I do want to let you speak. I totally agree. Mm-hmm. But please don't presume to know why we were interrupting. That's entering into sort of telling me what I'm thinking. The reason I interrupted was I wanted to dispute what you were saying at the moment. I am fine with you making statements, making your argument, but we can't let you go on until we address the point of the matter. And if we skip over it and let you talk for another 30 seconds, 60 seconds, then we have to jump back in time. So please don't, insinuate motivations as to why I said, hey, let's jump in here and talk about this. Please do proceed.
The way you said, the way you said it was a lot clearer than what I did, than the way I said it. So I apologize about that. Okay. It's just that it's just to clear out this for the listeners. So going back to that, what the Bible says is that the difference is that death entered through the sin of Adam and Eve, and evolution teaches that death has always been a part of our lives from the beginning of time.
Yeah.
And
Do
there's a
you
difference
really
there.
believe
There's a
that
difference.
death did not exist in the world until Adam and Eve sinned? Do you really believe that, Joe?
Yes.
How did they eat?
How did they eat? They ate of the trees, of the fruit, of the.
But
That's
that
what
would
the
be
Bible mentions,
killing
that they
that would
didn't
be
eat.
killing at the very least cells. Like do you think cells are real? Do you think like bacteria and viruses and like
I
I've got
think
skin cells right here, I've got hair follicle cells and stuff, right? Like do you believe those are real?
I'm not hearing them.
You still with us, Joe?
sacrifice.
We might have lost you.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Can
Do you believe that cells are real? Do you believe cells are a thing?
I think that again, there's a misunderstanding of that. I'll explain like this. The Bible says when Jesus Christ, when God told Adam, when they sinned, he goes, "I'm going to require sacrifice." Instead of,
Okay, I'm gonna jump in again. You were asked a pretty straightforward question.
Yeah, I'd love.
Are cells real? Like, I'm going to explain and then to talk about something else. That's what we call misdirection or pivoting. You know, if I were in court, I would object. I'd say, "Hey, judge, can you make him answer the question?" So I'm going to do that here. Do you accept that cells exist? Do you accept that
you're not
viruses
yes,
and bacteria exist?
Judge.
I'm asking.
Joe, we're
if-
literally the reason that I brought this question up, Joe, is because truly, like, I just want some clarification, because it sounds like to me that you have set up a system in which you yourself would disagree with the conclusion that you're espousing, right? Like the idea that only when Adam and Eve committed that first sin did death start to exist in the world seems to be pretty contrary to not just what we know about the world now with our modern scientific understanding, but like even what people would have thought back then. Like, I'm pretty sure most people are comfortable with the idea of saying, like, hey, if we go to an apple tree and it's got apples and we pick the apples and we just let them sit on the ground, they're going to like rot and stuff and like decompose. And that's due to like death. You know, that's due to like the cells dying and then other bacteria coming along and like eating them, which, by the way, this is just a tangent. It's not really relevant exactly. But the reason that we have fossilized trees is because for a long time in the history of existence, we didn't have a bacteria that could like break down trees, which is really cool. Like, that's just really fascinating little piece of history. But anyway, totally irrelevant. But like, yeah, the reason we jumped in is because we think this question kind of shows a flaw in your conclusion based on like your own acceptance of things. So if you do believe in cells and they ate from the trees and the fruits and the so forth, like, isn't that death? Isn't there death already before the sin?
No, there's not death. So the way you assume to be death is you're talking about life with conscience. You're talking about life with understanding. There's a difference. When God said,
trees aren't conscious. I mean, I don't think we have good evidence to suggest that they are, but like, again, how do we know for sure?
He makes a division when he says, I require blood sacrifice. Blood sacrifice. He makes a division there. This is something, this is a flaw
animals
in your
eat other
statement.
animals still? Didn't that still happen?
No,
like, how did a lion, God made a lion, and at one point Adam was like naming the animals and trying to figure out whether or not any of them would be good to have sex with, because apparently, I don't know, that's a weird part of the story, but doesn't matter. But like, God made a lion and God made a sheep, right? And
the lion has incisors
that
are made for tearing meat apart,
right?
Not for chewing plants. So if you're going to go down the road of lions were vegetarians before Adam and Eve, which I've heard a lot of people say, that again goes against the evidence. So
I will say though, Joe, before we are going to let you go, I know you had more to say, man. And honestly, I have really, really valued this conversation with you. I thought you have been a pretty darn good interlocutor, man. You know, a lot of times we just get people that just want to yell and you know, don't really try to do some clarification. And I think you were for us. And unfortunately, I've got so many other good calls. I've got like 7, 8, 9 calls, it looks like, that are backing up. which is great for us. But it does mean, unfortunately, we have to cut it short, man. But seriously, I really, really hope you will call us back, whether I'm on this show or Cross Examiner or any one of our phenomenal hosts, because I think you will also have a good discussion